you want to do with them? So you don't want to keep those like there?
I would push all the tables and use only the squares. It's more convenient.
Well, the thing is, they moved them for us. They moved them for us. They arranged the room for us.
Oh. But they didn't ask.
They just said.
What do we needed?
They said, not co-working.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, if it will be only 50 people, we can just put a few tables, rectangle tables here, and leave round tables out the room.
Yeah, like in the front.
Yeah, so just
smaller.
Just add a few tables.
Yeah.
Not to brush everything.
Because yeah, I mean they set it up for us, and now we're rearranging everything.
Yeah, so we can put two rectangle tables between.
So bring them out a little bit. Bring those back.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's do that.
Just decided to terminate the position. At least they said it. So many of them just keep silent. You can think everything you want.
Did you get the job here in Austin, or is it remote?
I haven't got it yet. In the middle of the process. Hopefully I will start next month, June 26th. But it wasn't by the conventional ways, applies and recruiters. It were some guys, some Russian guys who knew me, and they work in the company, so they decided to try me. Doing a half hour tech interview, some live code with everything. So they were kind of. They've got a good opinion about me. So I will be working as a contractor because it's hard to. It's just longer. It just needs more time to get a job in the company. So they use consulting. And I will be a contractor, but W2. But anyway, it's something because I've been trying to find a job already for a year here. Because I just have no good experience. You know, in the United States, I don't have experience at all. Even in Russia, I didn't work in any big company, so I know people who worked in big companies, seniors with 5-6 years of developer working, and they've got jobs pretty fast. I say just 2-3 months. One girl, 2 weeks.
Really? Wow.
She just opened her LinkedIn. She got the first incoming message from the recruiter. Now it's her job. One from one. Best statistics.
I also wonder if they're saying
yeah, it's a very harsh market these days. 2022.
those are friends.
I've been talking with some people, and they say 2018 to 2021, they couldn't find
the conversation.
no one they've been looking for 6 months, found one guy, and he declined the offer. And the last 2 years, it's vice versa. Everyone tries to get a job, and
So many people now.
yeah. But it seems the recession is, how to say, go down. It's disappearing. So maybe in a few months the situation will be a little bit better. I mean, autumn or fall, I don't know. British guys say autumn maybe.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
say fall.
as far as like,
Depends. And it will be the new fiscal year, so Yeah, the summer isn't that period.
Oh no, I didn't have it.
I see it now.
I mean, I had some.
Is there like
I mean, I had
Uh,
training before that, so yeah.
Roberto should know everything about links and everything else.
Yeah. I think just stick with the water. Yeah.
But you're saying like the best strokes to market there's 13.
Yeah.
Where are you coming from?
Doesn't matter how many.
You just have to leave it open. Yeah.
Like their own.
And it will be easy to tables.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a hassle.
I used to be downtown, which is like some like flight simulators and stuff. They're not flight simulators. Like a flight tracking. Flight
Right now it's.
what was that?
5 years.
Yeah, I understand.
He's awesome, right? But kind of like, oh, so you are that's the yes, talk about like the more work, right? But not yeah, and give them like more notice. And then here, where you guys, I took a little like 2 weeks off, and that's her like, but even then, I feel like we're at. I know.
Pretty sure they have
Yeah.
Even then, right now, it's happening.
General assembly. I guess any sort of like
It's not even weird. I don't really know myself. But I mean, we have like life posts or whatever. Or creators, rather. Yeah, there's supposed to be like some type of job placement or job.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of
Yeah.
How do you try to reach back out? Send my stuff.
One guy, yeah.
Oh, really? Is this React? Oh, cool. Right.
Yeah, it was easy to find.
Well, the first floor, first floor, they were like, the fancy people are here. Go upstairs. It was like, okay, I get the message.
Oh, yeah, so the Boston Dynamics stuff.
Oh, really? Well, I smelled brisket in there. I was like, oh, they're not gonna do this. This is not our meetup.
And now it's like, I'll be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I could probably use him as a referral.
Cool, man. What's going on in your journey, man?
Try that out.
Developer, for the last 8 years since I got laid off, and then that sucked. Actually, right around the corner. Oh wow. And want to move more into React, which is where I was going to begin with.
Okay.
JavaScript and all that jazz. Yeah, PHP. And just move more towards JavaScript, TypeScript, all that stuff. I got another job. Ironically, it pays me way more. I hate it.
Yeah,
It's not
the
deving.
trade-off,
It's
right?
not deving full time. I get to use some of my experience and stuff. And those moments are great, but it's just like a lot of busy work that drives me insane. I'm not building anything. I'm happy with building something. So I'm just trying to get back into that world and study and build what I can. Bide my time, I suppose.
Yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of talented folks got laid off Q1 and Q2 as well.
Yeah.
Like people who are way better than I am at my job, so I gotta take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
For me, I'm a freelancer and I've been doing SEO and pay-per-click, and I'm just tired of building with CMSs.
Yeah.
Clients typically want something unique anyways, and then I show them my offering and they're like, oh, you mean this is just a glorified WordPress site? It's like, yeah, but the budget that you're asking for doesn't allow me. A, but B, if I build stuff from scratch with unique functionality, I could easily charge more.
Yeah. Just having a place for that and budgets need to fit needs.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just bouncing through learning React right now. It's been hard knocks. I'm not gonna lie.
It's different. Did you know JavaScript beforehand?
No, I mean I've done JavaScript 101 like a number of times in a number of different courses, but I'm really struggling wrapping my head around JSX. And like, it's like a synthesis of HTML and JavaScript.
Yeah, and that's where it helps when you have the foundational knowledge. It's doing a lot of magic for you.
Yeah, I can tell, right?
Yeah.
Lots of symbols and it kind of like jumps some steps for you.
Yeah, and JSX is a really nice shorthand. There's this course.
Oh, dude, I need all the resources.
Ken C. Dots. That's an awesome course. He'll break down a lot of them. Yeah, his courses are a little expensive. I would say, depending on the budget, you're waiting for a sale, but they're highly worth it. Like I'm doing React stuff. React, I've built some React in the past, but that was one of the class-based stuff. And I've been touching for a while, and now we're on like custom folks. Like, oh shit, I have to like relearn stuff. He does a really good explanation of all.
Yes.
And he's been the most helpful in my opinion, because I've found like just through the React docs and stuff like that.
That's what I mean. How does that compare to?
Way better.
Yeah, okay, because like they jump a lot of steps.
Yep. Well, you're building stuff, so and he does a little bit of hand holding, but not like hand holding that you would expect. He's not giving you the answers. Like you watch the video after you do the thing, like he breaks it down in like text format, so you can listen to music and all that stuff, and not have to like watch 30, 40 minutes of fucking videos.
Right.
They give you information you need. It's really concise. You can go read his articles and blogs and like go dive into deeper concepts and stuff like that if you want. Or you can just see, what his problem is, and then you go and you try and solve it, and then you compare your result either to his scenario, or if you get stuck, bail.
That sounds good because
It's the best one that I found for me. I want to plug in and not listen to lectures all the time.
yeah, exactly.
And so my buddy was
Yeah, exactly. That's all
I'm gonna pay for it myself at some point.
Or just like make your own life.
Nice.
The
biggest premium-
use it enough. So
The biggest premium, as you know, when learning this stuff is time, though. It's about putting in like
these aren't even real
dash
glasses.
time.
These are blue light filter glasses. These are getting migraines. Computer time.
Because you do day job, and then how much curriculum time are you devoting?
I try to do a lot.
That's cool,
I've
man.
had to go back to books because I can't do.
I was wondering who's reading these books, right? They're like the books with like one black and white animal on it, and you're like, who buys
This
this?
is a really good series. I think you want to get like the nitty gritty of JavaScript and how it works. They're a little dated, but all of it is still pretty relevant. I found. I've had them for years. So just going back to them to refresh, get your foundations.
I appreciate you sharing me this resource. Cause like,
We're all trying to get better.
alright, I'm on the landing page. Where's the price tag, right? Where's the price tag? I'm scrolling.
I use a bunch of you can like pick and choose.
Yes, it's extended to 3 hours.
You want.
Okay, as far as pricing, like, it's expensive, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like,
It's not egregious.
yeah, you know how there's a limit, right?
Yeah.
Like my SEO course, which I love, but it was me breaking apart payments, right? Over a year. This is not that scenario, which is good. But every job that I'm interviewing with, I'm trying to have them get me education credit for something like this to quote myself out of it, literally.
I've tried to. It's never.
It's a flat rate.
Yeah.
Carving out time. I was making stuff around at work.
Oh, they don't want you to do it at work. No. They want you to do your 40 hours plus, and then anything that you want to do as far as learning is not on their belt, right?
Yeah, it makes you better.
Yeah, but no. Do that in your own time.
This has been the most it's the most concise. You're not going rabbit holing. You'll get like what you need and the answers you need. In your case, you'll have like more of his resources will be available to you, like through the articles and stuff like that. I go and find
So what is your current?
I work in the agency right now. I wasn't doing like right around I have developers.
I knew a number of people at WP Engine, and then I was a customer as well.
Oh, thanks.
And I think after the acquisition, I started.
Yeah,
some of the.
They capture customers. It was pretty annoying. So
It seemed like a great place to work. I actually knew a number of folks that were there for a while.
depends on the department.
Sure.
Yeah, all the good people like marketing.
And then after there,
I'm actually going hopefully to another company. All my friends left that company now. So like,
yeah,
a bunch of people from there.
Yeah, the expats.
Yeah.
Like WP.
Yeah, and so hopefully I'll like that down. But that's a lot of React now. Shit. But the rest of the company was way more organized. Marketing was we were engineers and marketing department. Like awesome.
Yes.
But it is what it is.
Hey, you know what? You gotta have infinite growth, right? Hockey stick all the time, baby.
But now I work at an agency.
Which one?
Emory, it's a small agency. It's not in town. I'm just formed.
Cool. Nice.
But I think I'm trying to get back into an office.
It's like alt style oil.
You up?
That's alt style.
like you work for the outside company?
No, they've
Sell you
done.
try to put outside company?
No, I just work at an agency. At the moment, yeah, full remote. Yeah, and so I want to get back into an office. I have a nice house.
Did you get a dog? You know what I mean?
I have a dog.
It usually mitigates it, right? That's what they say.
I love it. It's awesome. But I need a hybrid role. Just focus in the office. That's What's your path? Like, you picked up programming a couple times.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's noticed. That's hilarious.
I've got a buddy. He's full stack. He's fucking awesome, but he can't be my only business because he's like really cheering me on. He's a great guy. You know, he's helping me install Linux. I installed Linux over my Windows partition this past. Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm getting there, right? You know, everyone's going through that. So.
Windows laptop in college. Windows.
Well, now I'm like full-time Linux because I was like Grub basically screwed me over, and now the secondary boot is Windows, and I'm doing all of my SEO. Yeah, we run so much. Actually, like the support is all there. Yeah, just because. Like my buddy's like, you should try Mint, but we'll worry about that later.
What version is now? What version is now?
I have no idea. 16.
It's super like the stable one. Wow, really? Well, like I remember like 2 years ago.
23.
Wow.
23.
Oh wow.
Wow, this goes so fast. Like,
Yeah.
Like I remember when it was 14.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
It was really bad.
Yeah.
It didn't have support for like my monitor, so like I got tearing and shit.
That's fine.
Yeah, so but it's
I noticed some graphical aberrations and stuff, but all I do is I work in Chrome and then I do Zoom for my sales calls. So it's like, well, hey, Linux works just fine for that. Turns out.
Yeah, I was just when I got laid off, I had to buy my own MacBook. It wasn't giving me much. But they make great machines.
Yeah, I hear that.
If I could be on a full Linux later, I would prefer that.
So for me in the short term, I managed to get a number of clients over the next few months. I do a lot of Google Analytics, Google Tag. Basically tracking KPIs in a dashboard. It's not super guaranteed, but it's gonna pay the bills. What's that? Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, I've been working with browsers for the last 8 years. What's the next logical step? Get better at making websites is the next step, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. If I could make a CMS that I can deploy using Node, that guide behind all the meta tag creation, all the steps, and make sure all the arias are in place for the photos that they upload, I think that would be a huge benefit to the client. And away from WordPress, which is a benefit in and of itself. Yeah, WordPress is so dated at this point.
Probably, yes. The future of it is
yeah, exactly. Like, how much decoupling do you have to do?
I'm counting on you at this point.
I'm terrible at how much
That makes you perfect.
to do the thing that you just wanted it to do.
I would maybe even go to like what about you? Make it easy for everyone.
Yeah. So actually, my strength is
Well, that will make that sense for us.
with technologies like React ATX, what I for example that's like the latest React can also JavaScript very fancy.
Yeah, so it's not into the Capital Factory guest and go to capitalfactory.com. You have to trigger it manually on the PC with your phone mix it up.
I talked a couple weeks ago.
I absolutely only do the kind of know what it's
but also I was
When it goes to the part where you don't know what it's
I'm working off the GraphQL. It's still mostly like layer for stuff like that. But it's you can use it as a WordPress and stuff like that if you want to have a site.
I'm not going to be able to show enough code, I think, if I go and try to find out. I'll pop down the schedule. Maybe I can go a little.
That's a way that you can translate your data back and forth. And it's very cool. It's very flexible.
Nice.
I worked with Gatsby for my diploma, and I tried it and I really liked it.
That.
Yeah, I mean, mostly Gatsby, but I would like
That one's tiny.
That's a Gatsby.
I can't read that. Okay, yeah. So at least
Also, I really want to try Dino.
Oh yeah, I'm hearing a lot about Dino.
Yeah,
I have so much shit to get through before that pops out.
There's so many new technologies.
I want to build off of shit. Like I want to just stay in one language. So that's why I'm just choosing JavaScript because I know it's got React. You know the roots. You pick up all the libraries and frameworks, and I've done that. But I want to stay in that.
You don't want to do PHP forever, bro? That's what he was saying. He's like, I'm done with PHP.
So
Yeah,
some people love it. I'm just not.
that's why there's many different.
That seems dangerous.
Right? It's not going to be forever.
Yeah, now it's hard to read.
Well,
you apply for software
I'm not seeing all
development.
of
One company can ask you one thing, that another company can ask you a different thing. And you no way to understand what to be prepared.
Yeah, I hate coding issues. Yeah, I just didn't do anything right now.
Yeah.
Oh, it seems like a random hot twist sort of game show.
It would be much better if you take a specific Bible, say you'll be asking for like a topic, because the software development is like
So broad.
shit.
So broad.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have to do a lot of different things. You don't get to just stick in one area, which is the dream, which is what I'm trying to do.
Oh, we all want to. Yeah. If we could all just work on the thing that we like you said right now, you do some dev, but you're also doing a lot of other stuff.
well, I've never sort of built like
So agencies, they find work into you because they're like, oh, it's got to be good, but also fast. Do a good job.
Yeah, it's just easier.
Yeah, I've got one.
I basically have to do stuff. I have to be billable, so I can't go
I
to
just
work.
needed to check that this
Work
place
has
is
to
like
get done.
wasting
All the billable work has to be done.
Did he have
So you don't get to do any of the important work that.
you mean like harder times as far as learning about how to use the product better and stuff like that?
No, it's just like it's not really part of myself that I have to go learn AWS.
No. We got
basically like Cambridge server admin.
Yeah.
Not because I knew it, but because I thought. They laid off the people who hold it, and then
Yeah.
we'll hire you to go fix this thing.
Yeah.
And you'll get this part, like half your job is technical and half will be like global. And I was cool with that, like, great. But it turned out to be 95% going out, and then like 0%.
Can I just do AWS?
Yeah, I remember the similar thing when they gave me a project, and it's just like pull down on the deployment, and like I'm just a developer, and I just need to deep dive on the CI/CD process, which I wasn't familiar with, and then it was
Okay.
yeah,
Turkish is really good.
yeah, so I need to run their OC, go to their terminal, and run it locally, like pull it and run the command. And my implementation of the software development was broken. Like why I should do that?
I'm just like eyeing like copies like
Yeah. But dude, don't use the right one. I remember I used the right one. Yeah, I thought it is like for a cup, but it wasn't for a cup. It's for a big. Yeah. Then I used like first cup, then second cup.
Yeah, that's. Or not the more than married.
They don't see us there.
We can like a month. I'm gonna start mine.
But I mean, the goal is to do something before.
Like I can try right now, but I would like.
Yeah,
oh, okay. I have to yeah.
I like the name.
you might do a
It looks like
yeah.
I feel like it's a good guess. I feel like it's a good
Yeah, I feel like that. I do it every day, so.
yeah, I don't have the app on my phone. So.
Yeah, I can ask. Yeah. I don't know what else none of my friends. That's cool. Yeah,
PHP, JavaScript. No Laravel. Just those apps. I was working with WordPress for a long time.
that's
It was a freelancer because I see like there is a bunch of for PHP developers.
Yeah, I can take one. Yeah, like what was the Aces says it was this guy named Leon, super chill.
Oh, which tools you are using right now?
More specific.
Kind of blew up.
Like a script.
React
Yeah, there's tons of people like yeah, this one's
really depends. Many different repos.
and that's kind of I try my hardest, so it's going to be like
I see. Like you mean you're working on all projects at the same time?
This is even like all of them. This is what I can digitally show.
like yeah.
This company is like $600 valuation or whatever. This doesn't even cover. I was there for like 8 years. All the way from Simple Percentile. more React-based profile, which integrates with get it to work right. So we use an internal billing API that we grab that data, submit it, pass it over, and we use our portal. That's an oversimplification. The only thing I did on the design, I did the API scheme. So for what we needed is like how to test for a lot of the product stuff. That's basically what I did. But then I built it out. I have a jacket. I put work towards front end. I had to do really just it's really annoying. I wish I was a specialist.
Also, because just to have to, like they give us a project, they like have no idea what it is. What technology is there? Just take this and you need to work with that. You need to implement something there. And you're like, what is that? That's why we are full stack.
Oh, yes, that's why I suck at the game.
I just introduced it to Texas and I was really surprised. I asked him something this year. I found something he's right away in the chat. Here I'm yeah, I don't know.
It's actually not one that I was I was reading TypeScript grammar. I wanted to break the I've had this for years. I need to get out of the computer, so I just related books getting migraines.
I saw him on the frontend masters. Yeah, and I'm learning about okay. The masters later, like the platform.
Yeah, we just posted it right.
I was very surprised.
Oh, nice. He's probably got the best course. Probably the best one. React. Just the way he structures his courses and stuff like that. You're not watching like an hour lecture or something. Those are like those right. So it's giving you a problem that needs work.
See, that's the
it's great.
It's like a course.
Somebody made sure. You'll have different problems. Yes, that was when he gives you like a readme, you go through the readme, and then you have a bunch of code. So you have to build out whatever you want to do. So he actually has it for it. You just output it to spin up your server. You'll see like what it's supposed to do.
Prices have gone down, maybe not so much coming up, but like,
So I was actually working with Graphic I was doing a bunch of different things to handle and manage stuff and stuff like that. Use callback, use wrapper, use attack. Those are just conceptual things that you actually do. I can't stand for I saw your name, so
I feel like I definitely am. So what are you working on, man?
Especially, I thought this was a golden parachute.
Yeah, your name was right up. I didn't know you were the presenter. Not a big deal. Someday somebody will teach me something, hopefully.
I think I was on PTO. Maybe not. No, that's probably. But now it's fucking hot. Yeah, now I had to job interview between that with my friends and Jersey, your dad.
I understand. It's like, do they have a budget? Oh, you're my I'm it's a pretty big part of so I like fell off that. I've been here about this role for a minute with my old man. Now I find it like great. I used to do some very similar most of the React, PHP, a lot of REST with myself. Was your partner more they are. Oh my god. God, yeah, it'll be yeah. But like your Apple Watch is like saying you're in charge. Did you give yourself time off? That's great. Sounds like I'm gonna die. He's like, yeah. But you should leave the organization. It's so much easier to like block. Yeah, it'll take time to so don't jump in. I've been working with Google Tag Manager. Like, I do sites, I do content. I'm like
real quick, pitches and beers and drinks on the corner over here. Please help yourself. Thank you.
Like, I'm literally just starting to VS code installed on my machine. Yeah. I mean, like, but I'm tired of building sites on WordPress, right? Because the clients want something more robust, and then when I tell them, okay, there's two types of clients. They either want something more robust, and they don't have the budget for it. Here's your WordPress site. Or the folks who are like, they don't have a budget, but give them a WordPress site. Like, this is just WordPress. It's like, that's what your budget is. Yes, that's it might take us 5 times as long, you might mess up, but it's still yeah, that's it. You're speaking my language, but the other thing is, I don't. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I didn't like wake up. No, I sit down all day. Actually, yeah. So, yeah, man, I'm just here to like osmosis.
Next to TypeScript, I have actually, just try it out. It's fucking very cool. Localized anyway, and everything in just content manner. It's pretty smooth. But we
People who are not passionate about it, I'll tell you what. People,
so even non-confer recently, not a month ago, 1 month or a month. Oh wow, okay. Like our summer sucks. I'm not accepting the green.
okay, I mean that makes sense. New shore is also
Yeah, it's fine. It's most like yeah. Yeah, it is cold there. Yeah, in the middle of the country is the best, but then you're in conservative. What's your story? I'm in an intermediary type of role. I most of my domain, but I'm coding every day. So I'm trying to get back. I think this was definitely go it's out. Sure. Yeah, I got laid off February this year. So just found the first job that I could, and then they kind of made me a little bit. Now I'm not good. Yeah, you can call it that. It's manager if I try to work it. It's more like managing the relationship.
I need to put various years in my CSS now.
It's just busy working. I'm not building stuff, just
So you usually code like a couple of years and then
yeah, I'm at an agency right now. I worked right around the corner at WPM for the past years. So I'm trying to find the hard to put in there.
So,
I was in most people want to leave. They want to sit here. They want to leave. So It's not that I wouldn't be good at it. I just think
It's on the marketing team, it's in the
Depends on client mood. Depends on client's mood. Like today he wants to React, tomorrow he wants an MVP. Like the next day he wants an enterprise solution. Right? Like no, like they didn't remove it all. We want another one. They have like new idea.
Say my preferred stack is next
Japanese for teaching
What's that do? What's that do? Next year. I'm hiding. Have you touched React yet?
Oh, yeah. I did. That's a lot of money.
Hello. Can we find some seats? Maybe like in 2 minutes we'll get started. Drinks and pizzas. Thank you everyone for coming out for the office hours. Hopefully it was beneficial to those who came. If you have questions about looking for a job, boot camps, resources, right, feel free to ask myself or each other. There's a lot of years of experience here. I've got 10 years and I know there's 4 and 5 and people just getting started off 30 days or so. So don't feel like you won't fit in, right? So that's the whole point of the React at the office hours. If you have questions about React, need help solving some problems and whatnot, that 5 to 6 is where you should come. And then, so let's just start with welcome to the Capital Factory. Capital Factory is a center of innovation. Sorry, I memorized it and I can't remember now. Yes, entrepreneurs, investors, mentors. Check it out if you have an idea, right business idea, or if you're just looking to network. I can definitely vouch for the network here. It's pretty amazing. Think about it not in whole terms, but if you do sign up for a month, it's maybe like $300 or so. It's definitely worth it. You get introduced to the Slack channel, the whole shebang, right? And if you're just starting off and trying to get a job or work at a startup, this is a center of Austin, good place to start. Anyways, that's Capital Factory. Thank you. The React Meetup Welcome, right? We've been doing this for 6 years. If I've been the host for 6 years, Roberto Fuentes. I always forget to introduce myself. But I've been doing front-end, back-end, database management systems, and now cloud engineering, platform engineering in the last 3 years, but 10 plus years. And React has just been a game changer for myself, coming out of AngularJS. The mind shift, the mental model that React introduced me to was just a click. And so I've been stuck with it ever since. I don't do it professionally anymore, but it's the mental model. Once you learn it, it just sticks with you. It's a very simple way of thinking about building web pages and applications. And so, again, if you have any questions about it, ping me, let me know, put it in the Meetup channel. The name of the game is to help you out, and hopefully help each other out. So that's the React Meetup. Tonight's sponsor, Lawrence Harvey. Sam, you want to give a quick shout out?
Yeah, just a quick one from me. Obviously, nice to see you all again. There's some familiar faces as well as new ones. So yeah, a couple of months ago, I worked for a different company, Amicus. I've recently just joined a new business called Lawrence Harvey alongside Ross, who's just at the back. We're a global tech recruitment company focusing on software engineering. I focus on JavaScript, so I place front-end engineers into companies in Texas. So if anyone's looking for a new job, feel free to reach out to me or Ross at the back at the end. Loads of pizzas over there, drinks as well if you guys are hungry and thirsty, feel free to tuck in. But yeah, that's everything from me.
Thank you. Yeah, and so Sam has been a great resource on the Austin tech scene. So if you want to get a picture of what the hiring is available out there, pick his brain. So a large part of this meetup and the reason that's been going on for such a long time is a lot of community feedback and speakers, right? That's what we're here to learn something new. Tonight we'll be learning about Storybook, but here are some kind of like generalized, most popular asks for topics. And so, you know, GraphQL, everyone's doing GraphQL, everyone wants to learn about GraphQL, what is it? That's always a nice presentation. State management, obviously a huge, controversial, just insightful type of topic, just because things always been changing. React frameworks, right? Remix, Next.js, the new versions coming out. It doesn't have to be React specific. Smell, Vue, right? What have you? Byte, right? Whatever, right? Performance and rendering, always, right? A little bit more advanced, trying to figure out why or how React works. It's been an ask, and so if someone's really interested in giving us a performance lecture. And then also, you know, there's a lot of beginners. You know, what is React? How do you get started in React? How do you write a web page? How do you do the components? What is CSS and JS? Right. So, any ideas, any topics that anyone's interested in, just ping me. Let me know, and then we'll set you up. Hit me up at the React JS ATX Twitter feed. Send me an email at meetup reactatx.org. And coming soon. I know I keep saying coming soon, but it really is coming soon. We'll have a web page that's separate from the Meetup page. It gives a little bit more details of what we do. Anyways, so for tonight's speaker, Lance, we'll talk about Storybook. Yo. Come on down.
Hi, yo. I don't know if you all saw when we switched laptops earlier, I nearly killed his. So we balanced precariously using this dongle business to keep it on its spot. Great fun trying to grab one laptop while holding the other. Speaking of, how is audio? Do you guys need me to use mic? Would you be happier if I did?
Yeah.
I hear you use the mic. All right. We'll do that for as much as we can. There may be some one-handed typing, and I apologize for the awfulness of my skill with that. All right, so let me start by just saying Storybook, woo, 7 at some point. Clap, damn it, yes! Ha-ha! So, Storybook 7 came out recently, real recently. But if you've been using it for any sense of time, you're probably familiar with 5, 6 was kind of there for a bit, and then 7 came with some nice new features. I came around on 5, I can't tell you the history before then, but I've tracked the company itself and what they've been doing, and I gotta say I just love the folks because they do excellent work, and most of what they care about is really developer experience. If you talk to any of their actual recruiters, if you talk to anybody else, they pretty much have one goal: make the web go faster. They just want to make things work better, and they figure the easiest way to do that aligns immediately to all of React and every other framework with make very small components, make it reusable, and let's make it easy to test and get it out there. So they're very much a DX company. They actually hire advocates at this point. I know some of you were looking for jobs. They hired one last quarter, and I think they'll be hiring again next quarter. There's also spots on their actual development team. That's not just JavaScript though. They use other languages when you get into the core products. So you'll have to check what they need, but the advocates are a JS, TS style job. And you'll also be up here chatting a lot. Anyway, what is it? How does it help? We kind of discussed briefly the idea that we need some components. We'll get to that. For now, if you need any info on me, that's the corporate version, this is the work from home version, and we're all much happier in our various slots. Most of the time, I tend to work on just a straight up application style stack. I've got TypeScript all the way through, React, Node GraphQL using Apollo server, and then I publish out using Kubernetes. Pretty simple. Other than that, there's some personals. Feel free to ask me after. I'm happy to debate whether chess is actually a game or a profession. I love board games, and that's not one of them. All right, here's what we cared about though. Reusability is costly, and it's not easy to do. If you try to build a simple component for yourself, you probably did fine. Then your friend wanted something. Then the guy in the other team wanted something. Now you have at least 6 props. Times 6 props. And you don't know what they all look like. Sometimes that's easy. Sometimes it just works out okay. Sometimes the permutations get stupid. And then sometimes the CEO says, hey, what's it look like in this state? You can't put it in that state to tell him the data doesn't exist in the database. He just wants to know. It's not ever going to happen. But he wants to know. So that's where we come on to the idea of you've got a lot of people, a lot of demands. How do you get all the visuals out there to test and actually make sure that it looks the way you want? You should be careful with the word test. There's multiple layers, and I'll go over what Storybook can and can't offer as part of this. For now, just know that getting things to the state you want it, the ability to actually mouse over it, touch it, maybe do some interactions by program, that's what Storybook's for. Everything should be thought of in isolation. You're basically saying my one tiny component, these are the variants, and I'm going to put it out so that other people can see it. So my design team can go to a website and see, here are the things you can work with. We've built these. Please don't use something else. Or if you need something, here are the kind of things we use. The real reason that we started using it at my gig was that we had to start publishing the component library. Under the hood, most of the stuff we do is MUI. So you're talking about version 5, pretty components, themes. I wish that I had had that when I started, but no. We upgraded to it later. So all the legacy stuff and all the custom stuff sits in a Storybook, and we just kind of publish it and make it work from there. So we publish 3 internal packages. There's no actual npm run, it's just Storybook and npm publish with some tests in between. Storybook's perfect for it, and you'll need it if you ever get there. I have an example for that, and if I don't go over, I'll jump in and show what I can of that so that you can see some of the bonus stuff. But for now, I just need to go like base down. So, topics I'm going to quickly cover. I've got a repository of examples. You don't need to write it down. At the end of this, there's a QR code. You can scan it. It'll take you to the repo rather than my face or anywhere else so you can get the code. I've been pretty careful with the first 12 to 15-ish commits. They're very specifically like this step, this step. The git log's great. Read it. You can figure out exactly what you need to do from there and skip to the piece you're interested in. We'll briefly cover the installation though. We'll talk about some of the major integrations you might need. MUI, Helmet, React Router. Everybody ends up dealing with those. It's not as hard as it could be. It's really just wrapping a provider around it. But without the providers, Storybook blows up because context is missing or something else. We'll sort it out. We're briefly going to cover CI/CD. I'm going to say that this talk covers via Chromatic. Chromatic is the company that makes Storybook. Storybook, open source, has their own hired professional team. Chromatic is the layer on top where they get paid. We'll go through what they offer. You do not have to use Chromatic. You do not even have to use it for CI/CD. You can, and I'll make some arguments for and against. I'm going to briefly cover Figma. Anyone actually have to work with Figma here? Oh, good. Okay, I won't say that it'll save your life. I was unimpressed, but we'll see if it gets better. So when to use stories and not is going to be interesting. We'll cover that and debate a little bit, probably round into the Q&A. But the real reason why this slide is fun is the splat of logos. Everybody loves logos. The reason that I really, really wanted this in here was it's a hierarchy. Storybook and Chromatic, that's the logo on the top right. They'll do whatever you need them to do. They are built to run Vue, React, Angular, Svelte, web component, pure HTML. They actually work with an MDX file. So it's whatever you need it to be, it's there and it can do a pretty good job. So while this talk is React, be prepared. You can write your stories however you need to. And then other logos for Eagles. But we'll leave this up at the end so that everybody can grab the code if they need it. I'll come back to it. So just to start off, let's just go through the basic sort of a README. If you were to just want to get started, we'll go into view mode. This is to some degrees here. You can go through it on your own when you clone it, but I want to highlight the important steps and kind of what's changed since I wrote it that I just did. So if you're just going to start off a normal React app, it's pretty simple to do a Byte app these days, which is what these are built on. Nothing special, literally just create React app Byte. Nifty. At the time of writing, Storybook 7 was still on the next branch. I'm pretty sure it's been published out to the stable, so you would probably be using Storybook at 7 at this point. Note that that is what you do after React is working. Get your React, get your Vue, get your something, and then run Storybook in it. And they'll take care of everything for decisions for you for the most part. I haven't had choices come up on Vue, React with Byte, or just plain create React app. They do a pretty good job of sniffing out what you need and setting up your installation files. From there, you can always run Storybook. And actually, for sheer giggles, let's run Storybook. So if you pop this up, you find this is kind of the entry that any one of your teams would get. This is the same thing that happens if you publish a built version of it out to the web through any mechanism. You get your Explorer on the left that has all of your various find what you need. If you click into find, you automatically get your most recent stuff that you care about. And it actually will build a directory system based off your actual files as they are in your directories, or you can manually control that if you need to. For now, we'll skip some of this, but a big, huge thing. Storybook has like 12% developer awareness share, according to the makers. So if you're working with a team, the people you hire won't know what it is very well. Use this page. Actually promote it. It's good for getting an understanding of what it is. If for some reason you have to change for your company culture, please be careful that you leave the links and that they can get their head around it quickly. I've had someone change it to where the homepage was our homepage. That is the least helpful intro to a UI library I've seen. Please don't do that to your friends. All right, so let's go back to the code. We can discuss and look at the material UI, the async, and the React Router DOM here in just a minute. There is an interesting little project that should do better what I had to do manually. We'll see how far it's come along. You'll hear that caveat a few times. When I built this, it was pretty new, and it's since come better. So this is a wall of text. We're not reading it. Short version. You need to publish it. Your designers and everybody else needs access to this business. You've got to get it up CI/CD to somewhere. I will make the argument for Chromatic. Reason that Chromatic is awesome is that when you publish to them for free, they will do visual regression testing. They will put out and hook into your thing, and they will pass-fail your build if you want them to, but otherwise they'll just show you, here's what you screwed up, here's what changed, did you mean to? Very, very helpful if you have to do pixel perfect. Oh, none of us are necessarily doing that these days, but it is useful to have that diff. The other things they offer is easy hosting out to everything else, and it's free. You have to have a fairly large team before you start paying massive costs, but they charge, as I saw, through the number of advanced features you run, so the amount of check-ins you make, and that would be your PRs will count as a build. That can scale and eat you, so when you get advanced, maybe you use the Storybook static build and push out to some static website. Or maybe you've paid for the cost and it's worth it. That's a personal decision your team will need to make. So doing that, I have an example in here. You'll find it. You'll need to install the Chromatic package. You'll just add one tiny little script, and then you can run Chromatic. And it will ask, hey, what's your account? It'll do your login. It'll hook up everything you need, give you an account ID. Eventually, you drop that account ID into a tiny little thing, which is GitHub Actions. And it comes out super simple. This is basically copy and paste, and oh, there's the one thing that changes. It sits in the .env for me. You can pull it, you can use it, it gets out pretty easy. Figma, we'll go over in a minute. For now, let's actually start by moving backwards in time quite a bit. I'm going to try to walk through the basics of the steps that were required to make this thing work, and we'll check out the code as we go so that you can get an understanding of the pieces. So if we were to just run the initial sort of hello world for React, nifty, like React, exactly what everybody makes when they start, or at least if you started in the last 4 years. Let's figure out what to do with Storybook for that. We need to reproduce it so that we can visually test it. So we'll pop up get my next checkout, which is just the initial sort of Storybook changes. And take a look, to some degree, what changed. I'm not going to go over every single file, because no one needs to see that. But in general, what they've done is introduce the .storybook folder. And in there, there's a main TS. That main TS comes in with the add-ons they expect you will need, the framework that it detected, and the auto tag option for docs. I'll cover doc auto tagging in a bit. Note that they do specifically search for .stories. So anytime you make a component, button, .stories, whatever. And they come with some of those pre-configured. So if we look at what they offer you, these are things that they ship out automatically for you. And if we were to use a very basic, let's use the button because it's terribly helpful. Standard React component. Got some props, does some stuff. Let's jump in and look at what the story looks like for the first actual view of that. So this is the version 3 of their story metadata sniffing TypeScript stuff. You will see in older docs a slightly different version. It's not hard to upgrade or switch. But for now, just know that you import their stuff, you import your component, and then you send out some metadata. This is how you were getting the manual folder structure, note the slash. If they don't have that in there, it would actually come out as, I think, just source stories. And then the title of it, it'll search out your directory structure unless you put this. It reads using that, a lot of the props, just through TypeScript inference. If you are not a TypeScript person, I apologize, but I'm also sorry for you. So please move on. Autodocs, we talked about archetypes. This is the interesting piece. If we were to pull up, well, we will have to do that. Sorry. Already running. Let's look at an actual story for a moment. We will pull the button. So this is their top level Autodoc interface. It's going to have your primary sort of first story that you published, a list of all the types of arguments you've got, and then variants. If you click into an actual story though, the interface gets a bit different. There's different ways to lay it out centered or full screen or whatever it is you need. But the piece we might care about, we'll see, now let me pull that below. There we go. So this story comes with these controls, and they were almost all snipped directly off of the actual story component that we saw earlier, just by this piece where it was able to sniff it, and then you gave it some additional typing if necessary. So at that point, you can scroll down, toggle it right in the line. Would you do that normally? No. Build an extra story if you need to see it in another state. But if you're the designer or you're any other stakeholder, these are very helpful. And of course, any of these can work, so you can certainly change them out as you need. Why did we choose that background color though? Wrong background. This is kind of an advanced feature that nobody's necessarily gonna know just from the fact that this thing takes a string, that it's a color, unless you tell it, hey, there's a type of control I want you to use. So depending on how specific your component is or how general, you have the option of layering on even more specific controls. You can build them yourself. Not always the best idea. Let's briefly look at this on-click business. This is one of the things where you start wondering, is my actual thing working the way I think? Let's click it. So, what that has done is read in the background that a component takes an on-click. Storybook is set up to auto-look for things that look like event handlers. So if you see an on, it's going to catch that and try to give it an automatic sort of interference so that you can know and catch those things. You can change the list of automatics if you wish, but in general, you're going to get whatever the event would have been. So most of you have seen a React event. We don't necessarily need to go into that, but it'll keep these actions for you. In this case, on click, but there are other various buttons. It might be a focus, but it could be hard to trip using the whole UI. I'll skip that one for now. All right, zooming back out. So we've seen the basics of sort of what the meta information consists of, and everything pretty much here up is boilerplate. I copy and paste it when I go to a different file, and I control R the names. Just switch it from button to text view. Then it gets a little more interesting. What did you actually want to show in users? For every export from this file, unless you specifically name it otherwise, it's going to create a story for it. So in this case, we have the primary, secondary, large, and that'll consist back to the things you saw here. And each time that you do that, it will inherit every argument that you've put into the actual top. This is where it's going to get fun. So it's sniffing off those args for you as you saw. Everything should be suggested, but you don't actually have to supply anything. Anything you supply here goes automatically out to every story, and then you can do overrides as necessary. In this case, create a new story, do this. The nice thing about version 7 is that you can actually pre-mix. It used to be that you'd have to redeclare all your args from scratch. Now you can make a nice simple constant up here that is your type, and spread. Everything works fine. That was a pain point. But that's your basics of what a story is. It's a set of exports, and then you configure your args. Now, why this matters sometimes is there's just a lot of variance. Fine. The other reason it matters is really hard to get data states. So if you've got an insane sort of, this doesn't really happen except for that one customer, please just snapshot their data, put it directly into a story as a data, and you can have it in front of you. You don't need to write a mock service necessarily, though they have quite a bit of documentation on how to do mocking in their opinion, if you wish to. So let's scoot on and check the other steps that would be required. Before I go too much further, that was sort of the basic core. Everything else from here is like candy and sugar. Were there questions on what it does and how it does so far? Go for it.
So the button has like a button, not stories, right? So does that stories live with the button source, or does it live on the Storybook repo or Storybook code?
Sure. So if you look at the directory structure on the left, it might be a little hard to see at that distance, but the three files are all highlighted there. So the CSS for it, the button, and the stories are all in the same spot.
Okay. Hey Lance, can you repeat the question? We can't hear you back here.
Cannot hear?
We can't hear you. We couldn't hear the question.
Ah.
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, the question was, where do you need to put the stories files? There is an option for co-locating, which is what they suggest, or you can do crazy stuff like putting all your stories into the top level directory. Then you have to do imports up and over and try to avoid it. Co-locate as much as you can, it makes life much simpler for you. Anything else before we move on to some of the other?
Maybe I didn't quite understand, but chromatic, you said that they can run do some testing and stuff like that.
Sorry. I'd like to hear more about what chromatic can do.
Good. Let's go there next. Before we go on to chromatic or any of the other stuff, basics of Storybook.
Yeah. How does Storybook know where the co-located files are?
npm package directory sniffing. So it will figure out from source. It's looking generally inside source. If you look at this, in the config file, it actually tells you the directories where it's looking and the files that it's looking for. And so it's just glob pattern recognition. And then it takes the file path and converts that into the directory structure that you saw on the screen.
When you say it,
Storybook's background processor, which is a bit like Vite. Actually, it sits on top of Vite, or if you don't have Vite active, it sits on top of whatever React app used. Okay. Did that answer your question, or was there more? Cool. Fair to move on then? Cool, let's go. So let's check what that next commit is, because that's how I've organized all my thoughts. Woo, chromatic. Like I said, it would be next. So just changing to get chromatic up and running. I introduced this earlier, which was the GitHub action to actually get out there. I'm publishing whenever I check in. So you'll see a new build every time. And we'll go look at those in just a second. But a couple of changes that need to be made. First, when chromatic runs, it's going to make a static directory. Don't check it in. I added 2 tasks, one which is build for Storybook, small change to that, and then also a chromatic and my project token. Hey, don't steal my project token. And then the chromatic package itself, which is dev dependency. Small changes to the README just to show that it works, and let's actually go there. So this is a point-in-time version of that Storybook that you saw running from my local. This is accessed over the web from Chromatic itself. This would be what you can actually send out to your friends, but you literally saw this before. Note that it is point in time. This is not up to date. So the version in the URL does matter. They have a branch specific or a main specific or head. You can share what you need. But let's actually go to Chromatic. Woo. All right, so here we are. This is the package that I've been publishing. I've checked in 30 times. Let's look at first what they offer, which is kind of a different view for you if you really wanted to. This is the link that you saw before. This would take people there as well. And then it's got your various stories that they've screenshotted and put out for you. And they will market to you. But as far as the builds go, let's take a look at some of those differences. So each one of these you can see where I have not really been keeping up. Let's take a look at what they offer. Oof. Well, that's hard. That's painful. Let's take a look back. This is their recommendation of things. Let's deny that. I would punch out. I think this one might be too old. The build may be. My build may have expired, which is why you're potentially seeing this baseline diff, because that's not something I would have expected. Regardless, this is where their testing comes in. If you need to see more than just did you accept it, deny it, and who did it, you'll be able to hook in and look at the actual differences. Some of that's going to be in the screenshots they'll produce for you of every single story. Some of that is in the integration into your CI/CD build. You'll have to additional some configurations, like you would have to give the plugin in GitHub to go out and ask. But that's where you would get your visual sort of testing on do you approve or not. Someone has to come in and view them each time though. You could do the batch of them. I may not have paid for all of it, and I would prefer not to right now. But the basic idea is that they offer that, and you can see each time what's sort of changed and what has changed in this build versus it was never reviewed, which is what you're seeing on most of mine. I didn't review any of these yet. So you've got your list of builds there. If you were to look at the actual management of the particular project, you've got a UI review. Clearly I've disabled it on purpose. And then visual testing enabled for whatever browsers you needed. Those you do pay for. That is from CPU time they basically charge you for. And then snapshots. A lot of these are off because it's a free project right now and I didn't want to pay for it. But these are the kind of things where they can do that testing for you. And they've got docs for all of it. If you need to invite collaborators, you just send them the link and you can manage whether they are owners, viewers, or everything else. So short of me paying to open everything up, did you get an answer as to sort of how it would integrate and what teams would see? Is there a specific question that I don't have to go to the docs? Or what can I ask for? Shelly.
Okay, so if you're in a company and say the company wants to manage their own site for that, like they don't want it to go out on Chromatic's site, do they just post it on a server? Like, does that even involve Chromatic?
It does not. So if all you're wanting to do is have a static site where you can pass it to, you're not going to have the branch functionality as well. It'll depend on your CI/CD setup. You can do a build every time you check in your branch work or your commit or anything else and push it out with a URL. But that'll be up to your team to do those domain routes and everything else. But in the end, when you just do a Storybook build, it creates a static directory of CSS and JS files compiled. So you can send that out and publish it to wherever you need. And after that, DevOps.
I think I have a more basic question. So is Chromatic what you would be using if you want to do an automation testing, checking for visual changes whenever a build release happens?
That's their primary business model. They offer that sort of snapshot pixel level difference checking, and then they offer a track of non-developers to come in and actually click and review.
So
you don't necessarily have to.
There's a report that also uses that.
That's what that build was. We pretended that I happened to have denied this one, and in the future we'd see that there was a change. Never reviewed the old ones. But this would be where designers or other people could come in and do that review of every component that changed if they wish to.
And do you like run certain scripts to, like, let's say you want to do automation for certain behaviors?
Define behaviors. I need a
so,
little more info.
Let's say hover state or just like from after a click. Like,
Okay, so that's back to the interaction level when you're talking about Storybook itself. So if we're talking about, we'll just grab this button. It is not showing anything in particular on hover. Click isn't either. And that's a bit of a miss, isn't it? Let's go find something where you can actually see that. So let's use the very first story that I wrote, which is checking out something to mimic in Storybook what would have been the initial bike page. So we have a very small change to the app itself. Frankly, I like that syntax. And then we had to write a story for the front so that we would present in Storybook the same thing that we saw if we brought in the app. To that end, I had to write a couple of things that I want to introduce. First, I'm going full screen because that's what the whole thing is. Second, I'm introducing on every story within this component a render function. I'm wrapping it in something called div_id root because that's what you'd find if you were to look at index.html. I had to have that in order to make everything mount and look and work the same way. So now if we were to go and look at the actual running Storybook I've got locally, so you're wanting to see if things worked. Here's your mouse over of your highlights of your graphics working. Here's your actual hover state for that, and there's your click. Storybook is just the DOM. It's nothing special, it is the same thing. So any interactions that you could do there would automatically come in. We've cloned what is essentially the front page directly into Storybook by giving it the div wrapper that we needed to make it work. Outside of that, there was nothing else we had to do. This whole thing is all new code, and it's just what you would expect mimicking the index.html. Let's go on to something more interesting. A caveat that you might need. So, trying to do full screen sometimes seems like there's a bug in their initial sort of thing they send out. I've had to go into the head file that they provide frequently and at least add these two pieces of code. You can look them up, grab them off the repo. It might just help you, because otherwise it didn't surely go full screen very often. So this is a bit of a different thing. I won't bother checking it out necessarily. But if I wanted to make the behaviors different because I changed the way that the app needed to work, well, okay, I changed the CSS, fine, we'll reflect it. Nothing terribly styled or interesting there. Scooting on. Here's where we get into a topic that I do need to cover. So when we are trying to work with React, we're going to have various providers. We're going to have probably an Apollo provider, theme provider, and whatever else you've got. Typically, it's one big bundle at the top of your app. In this case, all we have to do is go in and change what was initially a preview TS file in the Storybook folder to a preview TSX. And then I've got a list of, hey, here's a preview. This is what they gave us. This is that matcher I was talking about on how they can automatically sniff things out. And there's your on catcher. So if you have other things like listen, that would be where you would expand that. In this case, I'm adding a tiny little decorator function. Decorator is a concept that whatever you do, and there's 3 levels for this. There's all of Storybook, all of a component, or an individual story. You can put an array of decorators to wrap it so that you can put generic code around all of it. In this case, all the app providers are now in Storybook. One top level thing, never look at it again. And then what is the app providers? Well, it's helmet, because I gotta change the URL titles. Easy enough, most of you probably done that. And then of course, your app needs the app providers too. Same thing, let's briefly check this out. This is if you needed to do the React wrapper. Now that is slightly different because we're going to start a different style. We're going to load data out of the router, and I do want to show how that works with Storybook because there's no routes in Storybook. So starting off, we still got the routers. We're gonna make a router decorator. And in it, we're gonna create in-memory routers rather than actual URL routers. So you're going to provide a different sort of entry point through Storybook, but in the end, it's still a provider that gets rolled down. It just builds differently. So everything gets wrapped with our new router provider that we made. And then we can go to something like here we go. So in this case, I made a loader function using the router. I just wanted to start and have it say, you can put a slash on the end of the welcome and it will start at, instead of count as 0, count as 33. So just add /33, off you go. And it embeds, and you get your initial count out of your loader data function. Not necessarily the topic of this thing, but is everyone aware of loader functions? Is anyone freaked out or need a second on this? Yeah, sure. So if you worked with React Router, you may have seen it in a talk here actually 2 months ago. I think it was the Remix team showed the React Router had gotten an upgrade. I believe it's version 6. They changed pattern. It's no longer exactly the same thing. It was quite a breaking change. So whenever you go through now and you make anything, you have the option of exporting named functions. The route itself will have an option, which is loader. It will fire your function. You can declare the parameters that you've got. In my case, I'm just taking initial count. And then you can return data here. Now this is going to do it from a string in the URL to an int. So it's a simple data transform sort of loader. But it's an async function. So the idea is normally that you would be able to have your loader go and grab anything that you needed from a server before it starts to render. And this is where you get into React suspense handling, so that it can show, hey, I'm loading or doing a thing. I didn't need any of that for this. I just wanted to show how you would hook up that piece. But the loader functions are how you're supposed to be fetching data once you're in React Router 6. Check out the Remix talk from 2 months ago if they've got notes. They did an excellent job breaking it down. Or clone this and you can get a baby version of the code. Either way, we've got an initial count and we changed a couple of things. So if we were to just go and look at the thing itself, default is still 0 to start with, still goes up, but we can change the initial count to 33. If you were to look at the React app itself, it's still 0 until we do 44. There we go. So let's look under the hood real quick as to how that worked out. We saw the component already. I don't need to go through that. Let's briefly jump over to the story. We're starting an export of a new version. In this case, we're adding decorators, which are very specifically to each story. I could, if I needed it generic at the top of every story, just use that. But in my case, I wanted to load different initial data. So this could be an async function if you really needed it to. This was the same loader you saw defined a moment ago. I'm just starting with a different number. I kind of hand waved a lot there. Were there questions before I move on? Cool, let's go. Oh yeah, nice nifty note because you might need it.
I do have a quick question. So you're showing us like React Router at like a provider. I'm thinking about like the context API from React, and my idea of like adding some sort of a theming for the storybook is like what I want to do is like, let's say my site has like light and dark mode, and I want to test it. What would you do?
That is the bonus material, but I can quickly show you a code for that, and hopefully that won't kill our time.
I mean, if it's later, we can.
Oh no, it's quite alright. It's a separate repository I was going to cheat and not show, but we can do that right now. So in my case, I have that internal repo that I mentioned. We have all those display components. I've got multiple themes inside that published library, and I need to create an MUI cache, and then I create a provider that has all those themes potentially in it, and you can switch those things based off what looks like MUI boilerplate to most of you probably. Within the theme switcher, it's React context, exactly like you said, and then I have nothing but a simple bar and a select so that you can change which theme you're in. Within the preview, I just pull in the theme switcher on top of that in an app bar and then launch the children. I'll run this in the background, it'll pop up mid-conversation, but you can see where you have that ability. There's actually a recipe for this. The Storybook community knows about those sort of integrations in the major packages, and they have those sort of recipes on their website. You can get most of what you need from there. Yes, good. All right, we are, what's the time we're allowed here? How much you want to get?
About 15.
About 15? All right, let's try to move through wrapping up and showing more advanced examples then. We'll get to the theme switching in a second. While I've got browser tabs open and I know I'm going to get interrupted, let's quickly jump into, we've shown Storybook and what it is. They have some very good examples as to how it actually looks. Nifty. For those who have to suffer through Figma, or maybe like it, this is your initial sort of Storybook integration if you were to look at Figma from the web and want to know what you're looking at. You have the ability to link a particular Figma story, and you can say, hey, what does that look like rendered? Well, the designer's design sucks because me. No one should let me design it. But the actual rendered code is in the thing on the right where you can pop it up into a new menu. Note that I had to install this every time I came back in, and to get it to work, here's where Chromatic comes in again, because the auth to go grab it is very interesting unless you use Chromatic and they can pass a token back and forth. So just be aware. But otherwise, this is what it looks like if you try to embed the other direction. They can inspect it, they can look around and do some stuff with it. It's not the best experience, but it's more helpful for them to do the visual check. I think they would appreciate it. I'll show you later if we get enough time what it looks like when you show the design in Storybook itself. It's less fun. This is my company's one. I'm just going to briefly grab a blade. So I've just got that theme switcher up top, and I switch out the primary theme of just the actual content. They have a theme switcher around the whole outside wrapper if you really want it, and I think in Storybook 7 it actually picks your system theme. But this should hopefully answer your question of switching the elements based off the theme.
Yeah, basically the preview is the one that I will be looking at.
So skipping that, we won't come back to that for a little while. We briefly discussed how that theme switcher worked. Let's kill that. And we discussed React Router. Good enough. Code quality tools, because at some time I got sick of not having Prager. Material UI, I sort of showed most of what would happen earlier. You do have to declare anything that would have been in the index file. You need to replicate to the preview head from the Storybook. So there's a Storybook directory. There's a preview HTML. Pretty simple. Anytime you load fonts or anything else that doesn't come through a package, you gotta mirror it. Set up a basic dark theme just because I could. And then in the app theme, no longer needed these things, started removing them. There's all our pretty providers, nothing special or new there. Okay, here's one of the things I did want to get to. So we mentioned interaction and basic testing. When you check in code to something with like CI/CD, yes, that works, but if you need to do interaction checking, there's a little bit more to it. So let's go back to that app story. And I've expanded on the primary story. I've added a play function. This bit here, I will discuss the technical parts at the top in a second, does a super basic, hey, there should be a button with this text. When I click the button, it should now have the new text. If we pop over to the actual Storybook as rendered, there's now an interactions test. And you'll get pass, fail, and at what step of it failed along the way for each of those play interactions that you created. Now, the caveat to this, there is an open bug that I'm trying to help contribute to. If you have a lot of providers, it takes a while to render the DOM. The story's interactions are going to fire and fail before the dang thing is on the screen. So you are either going to have to write something like a delay for canvas with the triangle back off, or hope somebody fixes the bug. Just be aware you may really need to write it back off. And you can do that through a set of utility functions or something else. If you don't have a lot of providers, I didn't run into this until I had MUI, React Router, and a few others installed. But done. Hopefully this helps you. But this is your basic level testing. This doesn't do anything for check in and check out. This is just when you're on the screen looking at it of, did it do what I was expecting? Note that it doesn't reverse it. It's sat there on the screen in the finished state. Although you can always look at what it looks like when it's doing the actual click. Your mid-click there, I don't know if you can see the highlight. So it's got a little bit of step-through time functionality, but it's into it, which is handy. Yes, this one I do want to get to, but I may scoot us quite a bit forward. So this is the first sort of custom function that you'll find in this code base. I wanted to create that leaderboard that you saw in design earlier. I've got several versions of the leaderboard, no results, some data already loaded. skeletons in loading state, and oh, something screwed up. Now, this is way more fun when we start talking about the leaderboard itself on the real web page. Oh, sad face. I broke something. That's what happens when you test live. I didn't provide a glib URL. So this is going to run, and it's going to generate data, and it's going to pretend that we're actually fetching it every second or so. Ah, crap. 429 is slow your roll. You've requested too many times. This is another good example why static data really helps for testing sometimes. Because I can go over to the leaderboard, and I can probably write a story that won't time out by using faked data. Matter of fact, let's actually change the data. So now we've got the ability to see that the previous scores are in there. Default scores changing, and more importantly, changing scores. And that's going to keep running, and that's not dependent on any timeout. That's me writing random data, but it's based off previous state. This just lets me test both that the animations are working, the sorting's working, all of it. You can't do that as well through other systems. This is when Storybook truly starts to shine. But it's a little complicated. I have probably 10 minutes left, and we should spend that on how this works, because it brings in the other piece, which is how the heck do you integrate when it's not a prompt? Context. So to start with, I made a leaderboard page. Woo, it's got a header, because no one needs to put that in Storybook. The leaderboard itself is a fairly complicated thing, but in essence, all you really cared about was the Apollo query comes out of the leaderboard context. And the query has things like, am I loading? Did I error? Everything you would normally expect from a GraphQL call response in Apollo format. I then have to do some stuff. We're going to ignore all the math. Make a pretty table, loop some arrays if you're loading. Otherwise, conditions for errors, conditions for loading, no results, and a leaderboard row. Various other sorting functionalities that we don't care about. Here's where things get slightly more interesting. MUI keyframe animations is why that thing could animate the way it did. And there's a keyframe if you need to get it. So let's jump to the important bit, which was the context. So here we've got a query and a dispatch. Normally, if you're using Apollo, you would actually only have query. Dispatch lets me kind of think it. And then a timeout for how long things should go. Now this is the real leaderboard. So I faked this to make it look like there were results. Wouldn't normally do that, but it was on a 500 ms, and then we just go until 0.4 chance of failure. Just so that you could see it actually bomb on the screen. Dispatch functions and cleanup. Otherwise, it's just a, hey, what did you expect for the data? This is what we actually expected. This is what we cared about. The shape of the data is all we really needed. So we can take this and go instead to the context over here and say, hey, we're going to provide a context tester, which is just another component. Nothing new there. We're going to auto-dock it so that we can do it, and then we're going to pull in layout and design options. Parameters is not well typed. I wish they would have, but the things you do here are kind of off the cuff, so who knows. I should probably, for sheer giggles, show that there is a design. The designer suggested that it should look like this. So when I said that I was a little bit unhappy about the integration for us, I mean, yeah, I can, but I can't right-click and inspect. I can't get anything useful out of it. This direction, not my friend. Switch back. So let's use a render function, and we're going to create our own provider in this case. That provider we'll deal with in a second, but we've got some initial sort of valuable data arguments. This is the static stuff. Let's scoot down to when we actually have the dynamic data with changing scores. So I created my own context in this case inside the render function. And then I'm making a change interval because I can speed it up if I wanted to or not. This is a new arg that would only exist here. The other stories won't have it. Speed it up, speed it down, make intervals specific to the story. Your controls are, and everything else is 3 layers of inheritance every time. Storybook, component, story. And then The same thing we had where we could pretend that I was making an Apollo call, I did a basic replication, almost a copy and paste, but there's no 4% chance of it blowing up in my story. So you can fake, make random data, pull in a sample, do any mutations you want here, and pass it down. Let's pause there. You've seen basically enough about Storybook. I need basic questions if you got them about Storybook, and then I want to discuss when you should or should not be trying to do this in the story. So what would you prefer to ask before we get to like philosophical or other questions?
In your experience, how fast were you able to start a storybook from zero to like a working version?
So for yourself on your local, I would say you can have all of it installed and up and running in 30 seconds. And then it's a question of, well, what do you want to write? Your first story, even with a copy and paste out of something, is going to take you 5 minutes to kind of understand the syntax on a copy and paste, and then you start making the tweaks on it. That's personal. I would say in under about 2 hours, you're going to feel comfortable that you can write a story on your own, get it to work locally. How long is it going to take your team to agree that this is a good idea? That was always a battle. That actually was about 3 months back and forth where I, as senior, said, hey, this has too many iterations and too much complexity. I want a story, and they would say no. It was always a question of, can you actually prove to people the value? And this is why the other topic of when should you write a story is super, super important. Get to that in just a second. Other basic sort of questions, Storybook generals? Cool. So let's just talk about that last piece of when is this appropriate. First, if you're working with publishing an NPN package, it's kind of appropriate. That way you aren't having to do a React with weird routes and make everything else work. It just handles all that for you. You can, if you want to at that point, integrate it directly into your main React app, and it's fine. You would do an ad hoc as necessary. This particular project has this weird component. Maybe my storybook in this project only has 4 components. Great, fine. Don't reach for stories. Please don't reach for stories until you have, I would guess as a rough thing, we're going to use the complexity scale. If it's over 13 permutation multiplications, maybe it's time for a story. If there's some really special interaction, like when you click this, it has to animate to the top right, and you have to see it, and someone has to touch it and make it work, or it has to follow a mouse, that's a story. Interaction points are almost always a flag. If you have to show interaction, it's a very good reason, because that isolation will save you. What the problem with putting too much into stories is you have to change how you write a little. We all like props, we all like context, but you're going to be driven a little bit more prop specific the more you use Storybook, just because having to write that outside layer of context that I demoed caused me to have a different version of the provider. Now granted, I can inherit the types and do all the things, but that actually is additional cost. It takes time to maintain it, you're going to have linting issues, and you may specifically run into, when you try to check in code, your TS ignores or your whatevers aren't set up to look at stories. So you may have build failures where you didn't expect it, where your tests pass, but your stories fail, and now people are mad at you because this was supposed to make things better. Just be real careful. When you're writing stories, no, props are easiest, but they make for dumb components. And most people don't end up writing dumb components even if we should. You're going to reach for context second. And most of the time, we shouldn't be creating tons of contexts, especially just so that we can write a story. You're now introducing overhead into the app. Sometimes it's worth it. If you've got a lot of really complex interactions, it's definitely worth it. But that's your break point, is when is that extra technical debt really worth it versus can it be a dumb component? But that's about all I would necessarily need to cover unless you all have questions. Everybody got a good feel for what we're looking at?
question? So at what point on your team did they flip over to agreeing with you on that storybook?
I'm going to say it was a hard maybe ever. It took very specific, oh, the data is hard to put in this shape. And sure, you could do it through a mock, but now you have to do a weird backflip in your app with providing a role or a flag to get that one thing in the mock shape, or you have to switch to dependency injection to inject mocks because I'm in some other mode. As soon as I started showing those options for, well, I need to see it and it's got to be in that exact shape, that's where it started coming. They could be sold on individual stories at that point. Before then, it was difficult, and I tend to agree. I stopped writing so many.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So, like in your experience, what would be like the other alternatives that you look into other than Storybook that does the same thing or similar?
I mean, there is React itself. I don't know how many people write a component and then skip writing tests, because that component may change in a week, and it was a super simple component anyway. So the cost of even unit tests or integration tests or anything else, we've got testing libraries. A bunch of us are guilty of not using them, or more importantly, their code base is shifting at a speed that writing tests actually makes it harder to change anything, and that's not going to help the business. So you could use the other alternative methods, but most of us will end up not testing until there's a bug. By God, when you cause a problem, now you need a test, or you need a storybook, or you need a something. Or when your designers ask, or when your CEO tells you it has to look a certain way. But those are kind of the other reasons and the alternatives.
It's like I'm trying to weigh in. They asked me to do like a component library for a CMS that we're trying to heavily modify. So I'm thinking of like using Storybook and at least keeping track of and documenting the changes, as well as being a training tool for content managers and content editors that will be using the CMS using those components. That's
so I'm hearing that you actually have to embed those components in an isolated way where they have to be able to review the library and then they'll somehow drop it into a CMS via a tag or something?
At least they'll be able to see it first before, let's say, if the CMS would be headless, so there's no live preview. So the Storybook would be something that they can use to review what it's going to look like, at least component by component before going into and building the pages itself or the content.
That's one of those perfect use cases. If it is a component library, you don't really have a good way to build a searchable index with various states and interactions any other way without a lot of effort. You could make routes and dump your components on the screen, but searching and the other features are all going to be subpar. Let the people who did this literal system handle that for you. I would say that is the perfect use case, and high complexities are the other good use case to me.
I'm familiar with Storybook, but I'm rather familiar with Storybook, but not with Chromatic. Do you know if they have any accessibility testing, like with colors when entered in as props or things like this?
I wish I'd left the other component library up. So actually, part of the tests that you can build in through an add-on, they have a compatibility set. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job of flagging things like contrast ratios or too small or various other things. And it will show those not necessarily as part of a CI/CD check-in, but when you're actually building the component, you'll see a list of issues, and you can click and it'll show you it was this portion of the screen that's causing the problem. I don't know if I entirely trust their contrast ratio checker.
Is it math-based or?
Yeah, like everybody else, it's math-based, so...
It's subjective.
Yes. Font size makes a difference, just like with humans, but it's always a question. look at the suggestions that they say for accessibility, and then human after that. Anything else, or should we just go have a drink?
All right. Thank you.
Hey, thanks everyone. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lance, for that. Before we head out, if you park in the garage, right, you need a little ticket downstairs. And Emily back here has little tickets to give away. So make sure you ping her, or that's one. I know this guy over here who's asking one. But I would like to invite everyone downstairs across the elevators to the bar. First rounds on React ATX. Just come out, hang out, a little networking, ask some more questions, get into the conversation around Storybook or whatever. But yeah, we've been doing it for a while now, and it works out great, and everyone has a good time. So please join us. That being said, thanks a lot to Lawrence, Harvey, Sam. Holding us as well. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming out, and we'll see you July 19th, next Wednesday. Right.
I'll send you that
Yeah, don't forget. I had to take a test, so I'm not getting a ticket.
I got a couple questions for you. So you were asking about accessibility in Storybook. What all were you looking for? Were you looking at just like fonts, or also looking at like ARIA label and other stuff like that? The actual
and it's only particular for me, and just something that's interesting from the technical accessibility. I think where, particularly around colors, is where I always get confused. Like, I can get good scores on Google, I can install something like Accessibility or something, and people pay money for it, but I always get concerns. Like, people actually are colorblind. Can they actually see the screen? and like the math-based stuff doesn't work. Like it sounds like it does, but then you show it to someone who's colorblind, they're like, I can't read that text. And so I was wondering if they had something that says, because I can make it so Google likes me for SEO, and I can get it so I can't get sued by the ADA. But can I actually help colorblind people look at my article or something? That's always my And for that, I have like tools, but like brutal. Like you plug in text colors, and they're like, kinda works, and you're like, oh. But like, I wish I had like a colorblind friend that was like, yo, can you read this?
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking
I've got one up in Salt Lake, and I've kind of landed on him a couple times. But no, I'm also like I'm also big into like UX as well, and so like that's a big concern I have, especially on my team, is like accessibility. Definitely trying to like I remember there was some before Storybook 7, there was some add-ons that I came across that were some accessibility stuff. I don't know if we got that in depth what you were talking about there, but Storybook 7 came out, it broke a lot of those add-ons.
I like Storybook. I used it before 5 where it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And like I installed it and I spent like 100 hours on it, and I remember like, okay, it doesn't work. Right. And Storybook 5 came out, it was feet and Vite and Material UI, which is brutal. Like his stuff is brutal.
Yeah,
like I used Next and Tailwind.
Okay.
It was so smooth. That because Storybook 7 was awesome. One of the cool things about Storybook 7 is have MDX2 support. Right. So like your document, MDX, so it's Markdown, which is it's just learning and just getting into React. Yeah. Just trying to absorb, right? Completely is Markdown. It's like, are you a nerd and you like Microsoft Word and you're too lazy to look at the Google Doc, but you just want to type in a code, but you want to type in like class code or something? That's Markdown. MDX allows you to use React components in your Markdown. MDX2 allows you to have really complex parts of your components, and you can use like a storybook, so instead of plain, you actually get the full documentation page that says, hey, like you can change the color using this highlighter, and it shows you the code that you can follow. So like storybook is development, MDX documentation, then after the alignment allows the developer to do the work. That's cool. I get 100s, I can't get sued, but am I going to use it? I would always wonder, like, can people read it?
The only way to do it is put it in front of you.
I have something that tells me, it gives me the, like, if you're green colorblind, it would look like this to you, and I'm like, that looks like good. I'm not actually colorblind. Oh.
Good talking to you. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Mike, I'm Phil. David Bowman. I just moved here, so I figured this. I've had a great year. This is the new React Superstar. But actually,
going downstairs.
I was thinking about going down and check it out.
I think the conversation would be more. I just kind of wanted to. I always like
do you work through the yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
Is your approach kind of is it like projects, like doing that, or is it like or so we can say what?
So that'll give you access to capital effective mentors, Slack, and then you'll also get notified of events, meetups, and we have a membership
The process of
every third Thursday. And but you don't
like it helps with
What do you prefer?
see if they're gonna I thought that they might stop in front of you're gonna like they're gonna look at also the commitments and a lot of companies also have their own way of adding where you add the number for like stories and stuff. And then so they're gonna be like, okay, if you use like some person it's like they might implement the story, but like what's really add a little bit of word like you're like, I can put one of these out the way, I swear. Just take it I couldn't do it. I hate that. Like, you know,
Focused.